It's Subverted Tropes, a podcast about movies, featuring your hosts Daniel Spencer and Kate Harlow. Welcome to another episode of Subverted Tropes. I'm Daniel.
And I am Kate.
And today we're going to talk about Cabin in the Woods.
I have been excited about this one all month.
Me too. I do want to take a quick minute and call you Honey Toes.
No.
Oh, but...
Nope.
Honey Toes.
No. Okay, so A, if you've seen Cabin in the Woods, you know that this is a reference. But B, if you know us personally, you will know that this is an ongoing issue in our relationship.
She has sugar toes and she won't admit it.
I do not. Daniel likes to chew on people.
So, Cabin in the Woods.
Yes.
In 2008, Drew Goddard and Joss Whedon realized that they missed working with each other.
Oh.
Let's talk about the works from each one.
Hit me with it.
So everybody knows Joss Whedon and his work on Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Angel, Firefly, Dollhouse, Atlantis the Lost Empire, Toy Story.
I'm just going to keep agreeing. You can literally say anything else.
I know, but he actually worked on all of those. He
really did?
He wrote screenplays for all of those.
I did not know that he wrote a screenplay for Toy Story. That's great.
I didn't know that he was involved in that either until I was doing this research, and then I was like, oh, that's so great.
See, now I'm imagining Toy Story, but Woody is voiced by Nathan Fillion.
I mean, I'd pay to see that.
I would do it. I would go to that.
That would be so great. Drew Goddard, of course, also worked on Buffy and Angel. He also worked on Alias, Cloverfield, and Lost. These are all just movies before Cabin in the Woods came out. So they missed working together and decided they wanted to write something with each other, and they were just kind of sitting around brainstorming ideas when Joss goes, I've had this idea about a movie with a cabin, and apparently just the word cabin was what sold Drew Goddard on this movie.
The man has a history. His family had an old property that they went to every summer. His parents, so his grandparents, they honeymooned there, and when they found the property came available, they bought it and turned it into like a family timeshare. I don't know.
That's probably it.
It's a very sweet story.
So Whedon felt like he wanted to bring back true horror movies.
As opposed to...
Well, he and Goddard both felt that modern horror had devolved into torture porn.
Can you list some of the... what was contemporary horror at that time?
Saw and Saw 2, I think, had come out by then. Maybe even Saw 3.
Okay. That's fair.
Hostel.
Okay. Yeah. That's a comprehensive enough list.
Yeah. So Whedon wanted to write what he calls a loving hate letter to the genre.
A Dear Sir Drop Dead letter.
He's quoted as saying, "On another level, it's a serious critique of what we love and what we don't love about horror movies. I love being scared. I love the mixture of thrill, of horror, that objectification, identification thing of wanting definitely for the people to be all right, but at the same time, hoping they'll go somewhere dark and face something awful. The things that I don't like are kids acting like idiots, the devolution of the horror movie into torture porn, and into a long series of sadistic comeuppances. Drew and I both felt the pendulum had swung a little too far in that direction."
I think that's a very fair criticism.
I agree. Now, when I first heard about this movie, I remember seeing the poster, which is a picture of a cabin floating in the air, divided into thirds.
Like a Rubik's Cube.
Like a Rubik's Cube.
I love that poster.
I was so intrigued by it, and this was in early 2010. So I didn't know really anything about the movie, because I saw the poster, I think, on IMDb, but it didn't say anything about it, and I was so intrigued. And the movie didn't come out until 2012, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. Mm-hmm. But I remember seeing something about it really having a new take on the horror genre, and I was so there for it. Whedon and Goddard were intrigued with the idea of figuring out who, quote, who we are as a people, unquote.
As a society, or
as a society.
That is a very lofty goal.
They both felt like it was easier to understand who we were as a people by taking a look at the horror genre, because when someone is face to face with something incredibly frightening, their base reaction is a good example of who they are as a person.
I absolutely agree with that. And it brings me back to what Jordan Peele said when he felt a very natural transition from comedy into horror. Because as you and I know, the best comedy comes from a place of truth. Frequently, not always. There's no one hard and fast thing that's always going to be the best. But truth in comedy is a really fantastic way to do things, and that bleeding over into the world of horror makes a lot of sense to me.
I completely agree. The one of the things I love so much about this movie is that beautiful blend of comedy and horror.
It really is fantastic. When we watched it with several people who hadn't seen it before at all.
And this is a movie that you want to go into not knowing anything about. I think, personally, I feel like the reveal, once that reveal has happened, is one of the best payoffs in recent cinematic history of realizing what's going on. As a huge horror fan, obviously, I had some really strong appreciation for it.
I just think the whole thing it's fun. It's just a lot of fun.
I'm going to go ahead and put just a blanket spoiler alert on the rest of this episode. But because it's very hard to talk about this movie in depth without talking about the spoilers, without talking about the reveal.
Yeah, and the entire basis of this movie being a loving hate letter, we can't discuss the tropes that make it so excellent without the plot points that correlate to those tropes. So
if you haven't seen the movie and you're interested in seeing it, please pause this episode, go watch it. I think last time I checked it was on Netflix, but it's been a long time since I own this on Blu-ray, and we'll talk about that too. There's some significance there for me, but watch the movie and then come back.
Get a friend to watch with you. If you can find somebody who hasn't seen it before, that's cool. That's super excellent. If you can find somebody who has seen it before and can keep their mouth shut, watch it with them, because they will get to enjoy you experiencing it, and that's so much fun.
Yes, definitely. I think so. I was going back and trying to figure out how many times I've seen this movie. I saw it once in theaters. I've seen it at least 5 times during the 6 years that I've done the movie marathon, and 1 or 2 times in between those. And almost every time I've watched it with someone who hasn't seen it yet.
I didn't see it until it was on Netflix, and I watched it by myself, which was just...
That's so sad.
I know.
Honey
Real sad.
Toes.
Don't call me that, please. There's so many other great names. You can call me so many other things.
But Honey Toes is a reference to the movie.
I know, but it's so forced. Merman.
I will let you call me the merman if I can call you Honey Toes.
No, I don't like it. I don't like it.
I just think it would have been cooler with a merman. So...
Pop-Tart. I'm going to call you Pop-Tart.
Pop-Tarts? Did you say you have Pop-Tarts? I saw this movie first in theaters after my family saw it and told me, holy shit, Dan, you need to go see this movie. Being a big horror movie fan, this movie is just dense with self-referential meta tropes that are so fucking well done.
It's got tropes on tropes on tropes on
tropes.
tropes.
On tropes. So, Drew Goddard and Joss Whedon both had other jobs they were working when they were working on this script.
The both of them do a lot.
They do a lot.
They got jobs, man.
They were also working on, I'm trying to remember all the other things they were working on. Goddard was working on, oh no, I'm doing a terrible job. Whedon was working on the Avengers at this point. I mean, it very early on when they were actually doing the writing and the filming, but they worked on the script together in their downtime until they had a basic outline. Once they had an outline, the two of them got a hotel room together.
Ooh.
And locked themselves in it.
Ooh.
No one knows what really happened.
Ooh.
But reports say that from 8 a.m. to 1 a.m., the two engaged in hot, unbridled, passionate script writing.
I feel like the more appropriate thing to do would have been to lock themselves in a bunker like Dan Aykroyd did.
That would have been phenomenal. I would have loved that. But instead...
It would have been a great detail. I feel like they missed an opportunity. But they live in that lush lifestyle.
Lush, not that cush. That cush lifestyle. I mean, they might have been in that cush lifestyle. It might have been.
I don't know. I don't know them like that.
Who are we to judge?
And
there's definitely a lot of cush in this movie.
They might have been experimenting, and experiencing. I don't know.
Have you had another bottle of wine to drink tonight?
No, I'm on my second cider.
So they worked for 3 days from 8 a.m. to 1 a.m. finalizing their script.
God, can you imagine how much room service they ordered?
I'm going to guess a whole lot. Oh. Now, to be fair, the one time I've actually had real room service, I was in D.C. with my dad. We were there to watch the Carolina Hurricanes play the Washington Capitals. This was during the 2005-2006 season when the Carolina Hurricanes went and won the Stanley Cup.
Come on, Canes!
Come on, Canes. We didn't win that game, but we got to see Eric Cole fall down and then score a fantastic penalty shot with the one move that he did that Olaf Kolzig still didn't know how to stop. But it was a lot of fun. We ran into a few other fans who happened to be in the room right next to us. We didn't hang out with them really at all other than the walk from the arena back to our hotel. But then my dad and I ordered room service, and their fries were fucking delicious.
And see, that's a memory that you treasure, specifically because of the deliciousness of that room service. Nothing else. Nope. No, that was the only reason that memory was great. Yep.
They took their script to MGM, and MGM gave them $30 million to make their movie.
Hot damn. Get that money.
The very first day of filming, they filmed the Harbinger scene.
I mean, I'm going to compare every Harbinger to... Oh, gosh. Now I'm going to mess up his name. Crazy Toby?
Mordecai. Oh, no.
No.
Crazy Ralph.
Crazy Ralph. Thank you. I'm going to compare... And yes, I know... I'm sorry. That sounds condescending. Yes, I know this Harbinger was named Mordecai, which is a very Harbinger name. But every Harbinger in my heart needs to live up to Crazy Ralph.
Crazy Ralph being the Harbinger from Friday the 13th. Now, the role of the Harbinger, if you haven't watched this movie, if you're going in and fine with getting spoiled, The role of the Harbinger is basically to warn the impending murdered of their murder.
Well, really, the role of the Harbinger in any horror film is to warn the ultimate victims that there is bad and to turn back.
You're all doomed.
Now, what I love...
Doomed.
Yes. What I love most about Crazy Ralph is that he keeps showing up. Like, he gets that they didn't get the message, and he keeps showing back up.
Ralph cares.
Ralph is crazy, and he's in your pantry.
He cares more than any Harbinger I've ever seen.
And that's why every Harbinger has to measure up to him in my heart. Because he does the best harbinging.
Now, the Harbinger in Friday the 13th Part 3 in 3D did a fairly good job. But he's the one who holds out the eyeball. They find him sleeping on the road.
Here's my issue with him. He came on strong with the eyeball, and they were more distracted by the fact that he was holding an eyeball at them than the fact that he was warning them of their impending doom.
This is true.
So, I mean, it was great that he brought a prop, but he got distracted from his message and didn't effectively deliver his warning.
Fair. Ralph, without question, from Friday the 13th, parts 1 and 2, he's the best Harbinger that has ever harbinged. You're very right on that.
He's persistent. He makes sure that he is heard. Basically, all he has to say is, everybody's doomed, get out.
Ralph cares.
I know. Mordecai, man. Mordecai doubles down. He doesn't just warn the teens. He also warns the staff.
He does. He tries to warn them.
They don't listen to him.
Nobody listens.
Nobody's listening to what Mordecai has to say.
Poor Mordecai.
Poor Mordecai.
Also, dude, that ear, though. His ear, in the scene where he's talking, particularly where he says the line, their ears are stopped, and you see that ear looks so infected and so disgusting, and makeup did a great job on him.
God, I really hope it's makeup.
Me too. So, that actor is Tim DeZarn, and he nailed his audition. So here's how the audition process went.
He came in with an eyeball.
He wore an open vest and rode a bike, just like Crazy Ralph. No.
I wanted that to be true so
I
bad.
know. Me too. Even though I knew that I was making it up as I was saying it. And now I've made myself sad.
Don't be sad. Ripley's here.
Ripley. So the way that the audition process worked was that they wrote scenes for each character that was being auditioned for, specifically for the auditions.
Wow. Okay. All right.
And Mordecai's was fighting with a vending machine over taking $1 or not.
Oh my gosh.
And him getting into the big scope of everything they were dealing with and asking if the vending machine was really not going to take the fucking $1.
I would love to see that.
I wish I could see it.
Oh my god.
He apparently ad-libbed a whole lot of lines and did such an amazing job of bringing comedy out of the seriousness of the character, of how seriously the character was taking everything.
Yeah.
That they were just like, this is we need this guy.
We need this guy. Also, look at his disgusting ear.
Look at that nasty, nasty ear of corn that he carries around in his pocket. So they shot that scene. That was their first scene, was the harbinging scene. Mm-hmm. It had its challenges. I don't know if you remember that scene. I know that you remember that scene. We just watched it. But it takes place kind of in the middle of the day. Mm-hmm. It's summertime. They're on their way to the house. Mm-hmm. It decided to snow that day.
Excellent.
Which makes
very
it
good.
Tough to portray summer.
Very good. Very good. Good stuff.
You know damn well which war. The war on weather.
We don't call it global warming.
We call it global war. Ming. The merciless. So let's talk about that whiteboard. So they take bets on what monster's going to kill the characters in the cabin.
Yes.
In this amazing build of seeing people taking bets and you don't know exactly what's going on still. And there's a great shot of the whiteboard of all of the different monsters that could have gotten the teens. I'm going to read that whiteboard out loud now.
Oh, yes, thank you.
Werewolf, alien beast, mutants, wraiths, zombies, reptilius, clowns, witches, sexy witches, demons, hell lord, angry molesting tree, giant snake, deadites, Kevin, mummy, the bride, the scarecrow folk, snowman, dragon bat, vampires, dismemberment goblins, sugar plum fairy, merman, the reanimated, unicorn, Huron, Sasquatch / Wendigo / Yeti, dolls, the doctors, zombie redneck torture family, jack-o'-lantern, giant, and twins.
I love that list, but there's also, there's another list of like who else you see, and I'm trying to find it.
Because we do see a lot of other creatures. For instance, we see the Killbot.
Yeah.
But the Killbot's not on the board.
Well, I guess nobody was pulling for the Killbot. Other monsters seemingly not mentioned. There's a man-sized tarantula, giant cephalopod, medieval torturer, Killbot, which takes the form of a scorpion-like automaton with buzzsaws for stingers, stringy-haired girl ghost, dead King Kong-esque kaiju, creepy child. There are 3 clan members. There is blob monster, giantess, killer garden gnome, and I'm trying to find the name of... So the name of that monster, who's obviously a tribute to...
Hellraiser? I've got his name. I've memorized his name.
Of course you have.
Because after seeing this in theaters, I wanted to be him in for Halloween. The character's name is Fornicus, Lord of Bondage and Pain.
I love that name. It's so great.
Fornicus, Lord of Bondage and Pain.
You just like it because there's a puzzle box.
It might have something to do with it. You put puzzle in it and I'm on board. But I just love all the different references. Like sexy witches, which is clearly a reference to
Hocus Pocus.
Hocus Pocus.
Yep.
Angry molesting tree.
Evil Dead.
Definitely an Evil Dead reference, though they also have the Deadites, which is another Evil Dead reference. I think that's cool.
There's the doctors, nurses, which is a Silent Hill, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't think they're named on the board, but the group of folks with the doll masks on, they might be the dolls.
Maybe, yeah.
But definitely a reference to the strangers.
Yeah.
The Sugar Plum Fairy. We get to see the Sugar Plum Fairy in the same scene that we see Fornicus, Lord of Bondage and Pain.
I love that they're so close together in the menagerie of cages.
She's the ballerina whose face is just rows of teeth.
Eel.
It's fucking amazing.
There's also the killer clown, which is most likely a tribute to Pennywise.
Yep.
But the Tim Curry Pennywise. Based on the costume.
Yeah. Just really well done. So AFX Studios was the company that created these creatures. They estimated that they costumed over 1,000 people for the 60 different monsters that they made.
That's just beautiful. Like, that just sounds like a play date to me.
What sounds great to me? The designing of all of these creatures.
Yes.
They started designing them all on December 15th, 2008.
Oh, wow.
And to hit their deadline, they had 70 people. David Leroy Anderson, who's the primary person who was kind of the head of AFX, said that everyone was working at least 2 jobs, so realistically they had 140 people. They were all working their asses off to meet their March 9th, 2009, 3 months later
wow.
deadline. It was apparently very taxing. And, quote, none of us are ever going to forget it, and we're never all going to be in the same room again.
That's such a sad thing to say, but I get it. I get it. They did an incredible amount of work.
Incredible job.
It's just very, very impressive.
So most of the shots in the cabin and around, particularly all of the shots of Jules and Kurt when they're outside getting ready to, do the nasty.
Go to Pound Town.
Go to Pound Town. I went a little Owen Wilson there. Wow. Let's go to Pound Town.
Nope, that's not an Owen Wilson.
Wow. Let's go to Pound Town. Wow. Those were all shot in sets. Mm-hmm. They weren't actually outside for most of those. The complex was most of the wide shots. A lot of the closer shots were shot on sets as well, but the wider shots were shot in the Institute of Technology's aerospace building for British Columbia.
Oh.
So British Columbia had their Institute of Technology. Their aerospace building was a lot of the larger shots that we got. Gorgeous building. No one had ever shot a movie in it before. It was so clean and crisp and white and beautiful that Drew Goddard was like,
cover it in blood.
Cover this in blood.
Yes.
We want to make the halls of this building look like Sissy Spacek towards the end of Carrie. Mm-hmm. One of my favorite facts about this is one of the folks credited for her work at AFX Studios. I don't know how much she actually did. Her husband was actually the effects person. And she was credited as Heather J. Anderson. But her real name is Heather Langenkamp, which horror aficionados will recognize as the final girl from the Nightmare on Elm Street series.
Oh.
Well, the first, horror movies.
Okay.
She was credited in it, so clearly she did some work in a movie that is just dedicated to horror movies.
It seems to me that more than any other genre, horror people come back to horror.
I think that's fair.
More than anything else. And it's not a criticism.
Once
it's just
you've shown that you can show base fear, I think that's a skill that is underappreciated. A lot of people are like, oh, acting in horror is not that impressive. But
no, but it is.
I really think it is. So this movie was filmed throughout 2009 and set to be released in early 2010. And then they're like, you know what we want to do? We want to do digital 3D on this.
Oh, snap.
So MGM was like, we're going to just postpone it. We're going to release it early 2011, and we'll make it 3D. It'll be great. And then in mid-2010, they said, oh, you know what, though? Psych, kind of. So we don't have money, so we're just going to shelve this for now.
Ooh, ouch.
If anyone wants to buy this movie, along with Red Dawn that we've filmed but haven't released.
Oh, ouch. That's killer.
Please buy it. Oh. So Lionsgate, who produced so many of the movies that this movie is referencing, Lionsgate said, we'll take it, and released it in 2012.
What a boon for Lionsgate.
What a boon for Lionsgate, and let's talk about why.
So we haven't mentioned a couple of the lead actors.
So this movie has Chris Hemsworth, Jesse Williams, Fran Kranz, Anna Hutchinson, Kristen Connolly. So Kristen Connolly, Anna Hutchinson, Fran Kranz, Jesse Williams, Chris Hemsworth. They're the main
five.
The main five.
Your core five.
But you've also got Richard Jenkins and Bradley Whitford.
Amazing.
Who are freaking amazing. We've already talked about Tim DeZarn. Amy Acker is in it. But Chris Hemsworth and Jesse Williams at the time when they started filming, when they cast this movie, were relatively unknown.
They were not a BFD.
They were not a BFD. This was before Chris Hemsworth had been cast as Thor, before Jesse Williams was in Grey's Anatomy.
Mm-hmm.
Jesse Williams was cast in Grey's Anatomy during filming.
Mm-hmm.
MGM saw the dailies from the scene where Chris Hemsworth is like, I'm going to come back with the police force and with tanks and machine guns and all this. And they saw those dailies and said, we need this kid for Red Dawn.
Ha!
And they cast him and they filmed Red Dawn, which similarly got stuck in production hell.
Ooh.
That also led to him being cast 2 days after they decided they were going to cast him in Red Dawn. 2 days afterwards, he got cast in Thor. And so
that one scene made a huge difference in his life.
Huge difference. So he, again, went from pretty much no one. So they got Jesse Williams and Chris Hemsworth in this movie for pennies. And then by the time this movie was finally released by Lionsgate, you had two pretty big names in it.
Yeah.
Especially Chris Hemsworth.
Yes.
And they did very well with it.
Mm-hmm.
So on the $30 million budget, I think they made $66.5 million.
That's not
on top of the 30.
That's not too shabby.
I mean, pretty impressive.
Not too shabby.
Better than what's his name did with Monos, The Hands of Fate.
I am devastated and shocked by that.
So there's a scene where we see a bunch of television monitors, cameras showing the shit hitting the fan. Mm-hmm. And there's one shot where we see someone holding up a sign. Drew Goddard tried so hard for us to be able to read that sign, but it just wasn't, with the way that they shot it, it just wasn't something that was doable. Mm-hmm. It was Ronald the intern holding up a sign saying, "Help me, I'm in the utility closet.
Yep.
A dragon bat has my scent. I'm Ronald the intern."
I love Ronald the intern.
So that's pretty much all that I have, with a couple of exceptions of small things that I don't need my notes for.
You want to get into some tropes? Because there's so many.
There are so many. This movie is intentionally full of these tropes. Mm-hmm. It subverts a few of them, which I love, and I want to get into. Mm-hmm. First, let's real quick talk about the Blu-ray release.
Yeah, tell me about that.
This Blu-ray was released on September 18th of 2012. 2012 was the first year that I did my horror movie marathon, and I was so excited to show this movie. I pre-ordered the Blu-ray, and it came to me September 17th because at the time Amazon was doing the "we'll send it to you the day before it comes out" thing. I loved that so much. This was the second Blu-ray I ever owned. The other one, the first Blu-ray I owned, being one that I purchased specifically for this marathon as well.
What was it?
Halloween 3 Season of the Witch. Sweetheart, please don't go. Honey Toast, please don't go.
That's not gonna keep me here. Pop-Tart.
Light of my life.
Pop-Tart.
The reason for the season of the witch. Sweetheart, please don't judge me. I watched Halloween's 1 through 6 that month. On one day. All in one Sunday. Surprisingly, they really go downhill after 1.
The thing of it is that there are so many things in your collection that you should be judged for, but I haven't judged you for them, so,
Hold on. Like what?
Well, as of last week, you now own Scary Movies 3, 4, 5.
No, I convinced Heather to take those back with her.
Oh, did you? Oh, good.
Yes.
Okay, good.
I do own a couple of softcore porn musicals.
That chain of words is just so delightful.
Anyway, so let's talk about the tropes in this movie.
Let's.
The fucking title of the movie is a trope.
Yep.
The cabin in the woods.
Mm-hmm.
In, Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2. Mm-hmm. And Dead Snow.
Isn't Dale and Tucker vs. Evil?
Dale and Tucker versus Evil.
Yep. All men are perverts. When the Jules and Kurt go out into the woods, The control room is full of guys.
Full of dudes looking to see some boobs.
Yerp.
We've got a final girl trope.
Final girl, but it's also subverted.
It's beautifully subverted into...
with Marty.
Yeah. We've got Marty and Dana, but also kind of they don't survive.
Because everyone dies. That's another trope. Everybody
Everybody dies.
Everybody.
Every single character that we see in the movie and all of humanity that we don't see in the movie dies.
Yeah. There's America Saves the Day because all of the other countries doing their rituals screw it up.
That's true, but then also subverted because America
everybody
doesn't
dies.
save the day.
Yes. Apocalypse log. So when they find patients' diary.
That's right.
And that is keeping track of the first time they died. Artifact of Doom. The basement where they have all of the artifacts that can activate.
It is filled with artifacts of doom.
Literally, yep.
I really want to know what was in the film that Marty was looking at.
Yeah.
I would love to know which one of the monsters that one
activated.
My guess is probably... No, I was going to say the dolls, but we saw another mask when they were down there.
Yeah.
Maybe the dismemberment goblins.
Maybe. Audience surrogate. So Truman, the security guard in the control room.
Yep.
Awesome but impractical weapon. The bear trap.
The bear trap.
Bear trap on a chain. Be careful what you wish for. Hadley finally gets to see his merman.
Very true. That does not go very well for him. We have, of course, the trope of the stoner.
Yep.
Let's just go down real quick the tropes that they specifically call out. We've got the
jock.
The jock.
The egghead.
The egghead.
The whore.
I hate that word.
Whore.
The whore.
The Madonna and the harlot.
The fool and the virgin. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So one of the things that I really love about this is they, from the very beginning of the movie, show that they got all of those wrong.
Absolutely.
So
Jules was actually a pre-med major.
Right.
Who dyed her hair for no apparent reason.
No apparent reason.
But
Kurt talks about, like, he shows Dana better philosophy books to read. He's on a full academic scholarship.
Yes.
Holden has the best hands on the team for football.
Yeah.
He kind of fudges the Latin a bit at one point. Definitely not really the egghead character. They definitely switch those two. We don't hear about any type of
academic
much of anything from him. And with Jules and Dana, we hear at the beginning of the movie about sexual exploits from Dana, that she was banging one of her professors. And that Jules, we don't hear about anything sexual with her. We have got no reason for her to be a whore except for the fact that she's killed right before going to Pound Town.
And then as far as Marty being the fool, he has some of the most insightful dialogue of the entire film.
Right.
But we are meant to write him off because he's smoking some marijuana.
It seems like they got the archetypes, the tropes there mixed up from the get-go, and I love how they pepper that in, but they never come out and say it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of implied stuff, and this is one of the things that, if you've listened to prior episodes, you know that I love when a movie assumes the intelligence of its viewer and doesn't have to throw something in your face.
Yeah.
And I feel like this movie definitely hits that.
Absolutely. Big red button. There's a gigantic red button that is literally hit to release all of the monsters in the complex.
God, what a wonderful scene. I remember when I was in the theater and they hit that system purge button, the doors opened up and I cackled pretty much the entire rest of the movie because that's when it turns from horror movie into just a fun romp of death and destruction.
It is absolutely beautiful. Cell phones are useless. They even say from the beginning they know their cell phones won't be any good, and they're even excited that they'll have a break from technological hangups. Collapsing lair, the whole thing implodes at the end. Creepy basement. There's actually two. You can call it two because there is the room full of bait, I guess, and then the black room, the black torture room, which again, that's another trope, the torture room. Creepy gas station attendant, Mordecai, the harbinger of doom. Creepy, cruel and unusual death, which is literally all of them.
Which, again, is the point of it.
Cultural translation in universe. This makes the most sense because when they show you the footage from the Japan scenario, the horror tropes that are being used on those victims are specifically J-horror. So it's like a floating pale ghost with dark black stringy gross hair. And they mentioned that the locations use the local iterations of what horror is to them.
So we see, the J-horror, the kind of ring type of horror there. We see Chupacabra in Mexico. We see what looks like a house burning down in Italy, which I think is a reference to Fall of the House of Usher.
That makes sense, yeah. Monster in the back of the car. The zombie being in the back of the camper, attacking Holden. Death by irony, though the merman killing, what's his face? You know, the merman guy.
Hadley, I think.
And then all of the other workers in the organization being killed by all of the other monsters, which is also monster turning on its maker, which is another trope. Dana refusing to leave without Jules and then being handed her decapitated head.
Yeah. The trope of we should split up, we can cover more ground that way.
Yes. Devil, but no god. So the ancient ones are portrayed as being ready to bring down civilization and destroy everything, but not really making any good.
Yeah, definitely. They are malevolent as fuck.
Yeah.
Another fun piece of information was that the god whose hand we see coming up out of the ground and smashing down was actually, there is a god that ties into that in terms of who Goddard and Whedon had in mind was the Greek titan Kronos.
Oh.
There's like nothing that signifies that, and there's really nothing that ties into that, but they said, hey, this is Kronos.
Nice. Dumb blonde trope, which is obvious.
Yep. Girl making out with a wolf mounted on a wall trope.
Yep, because
It happens in lots of movies. So they
all the time
covered the tongue of the wolf for that scene. They covered that in powdered sugar to make it look dusty and to make it more palatable for Anna Hutchinson to do.
Faceless goons, the security guards that come running in, the SWAT team that shows up in the lower levels.
Yeah. I mean, we've got the whole like shadow government trope of the government is behind this and will kill you. I feel like we kind of have a trope that we see a lot in found footage of the shit is hitting the fan and everything is fucked, that honestly I get tired of in found footage, but this wasn't done in that found footage style. The reason I get tired of it in found footage, I think, is because it is the time where it would logically be the let's put the fucking camera down and get the fuck out of here type of situation. But in this one, when the monsters were all just going crazy, there's the scene where that person throws one of the people off the balcony and the snake eats him. That person is supposed to be a Reaver from Firefly.
Ah.
But
adorable.
Like that kind of hits me as the, well, everything is fucked point of the movie. And I really love when that happens. Like that's so well done to me.
I do want to point out that I am sourcing a lot of this big list of specific tropes from tvtropes.org, which is a wonderful site.
It is.
But they refer to any time on this list where they refer to all the monsters, they refer to it as the monster mash.
Beautiful.
And the next thing that I'm going to say, I know you're going to love, the trope of the elevator. I'm your elevator operator. Mark. And the explanation is simply the elevator of horror.
There is a movie that I almost picked a couple years ago, and I'm trying to find the name of it. It should have been Elevator. This is good podcasting.
I will just keep throwing some other. Idiot ball. This is another invoked trope when the controllers are using the piped in stupidity drugs and hypnotic suggestions to suggest that they break up. The controllers suggest to Kurt that everybody break up because his smart thinking brain had suggested that they stick together.
I found the name of the movie I was looking for.
What was it?
The Shaft.
Are you sure that's not one of those musicals that you like?
I'm sure.
Damn.
Basically, an elevator becomes evil and sentient, and Naomi Watts and Michael Ironside are both in it.
Ooh, dang.
Edward Herman is in it. Ron Perlman is in it.
Sounds like a winner to me.
Mylène d'Anjou is in it.
Of course.
Hélène Maxud is in it. It's based off a French movie that has the same plot. I think it was also called like Going Down or something like that at one point as a working title.
Again, sounds like one of those musicals. Improvised weapon. Marty's mug bong. Industrialized evil. I love that. Evil as a corporation.
That's brilliant.
I just love it.
We could be going through the TV Tropes site for
literally
hours at this point. There's because we're in the eyes, and there's just so
and
many tropes.
It's alphabetical.
This movie is all about tropes, and that's the point of it. They wanted to try and figure out why we as an audience love seeing all of these things happening
over and over. One last smoke. They light up one last spliff before the end of the world.
Giant angry gods. I wish we could have seen them.
Power of friendship. Those little Japanese school children sang a song to fight their ghost. And now it lives happily as a frog until the end of the world. Unusual euphemism. Husband bulge.
Husband's bulge.
You know, it goes on forever and ever. It's just, there's so much, guys.
This movie is truly fantastic.
It's so much fun. And this is just me editorializing. If you don't find it fun, honestly, you're a spoil sport. You're not a fun person. And I'm sorry to be the one to break it to you, but like, if you don't watch this and see the inherent humor and the brilliance of tying in all of these tropes together to make one plot, then you're a bummer.
You're wrong. And I don't want to drive with you.
Boom.
So I think that's probably going to do it for us for this episode.
Yeah, it's pretty late.
I could talk for hours and hours and hours about all the things I love about this movie, but it's late. Some of us have work in the morning. So
we're going to call it.
We're going to call it
at that. We're going to call it here.
Thank you so much for listening. You can find us on iTunes, of course, Podbean, Stitcher. You can find us on Twitter at Subverted Tropes. If you have criticisms, ideas of movies you want us to cover, questions, anything like that, shoot us an email at subvertedtropecast@gmail.com. And you can always keep up with us on our blog at subvertedtropecast.wordpress.com.
And we're also on YouTube as well.
How did I forget about YouTube?
Because I didn't write it on the little card that we read all of.
That's a very good point.
We also want to send a big thank you to
our thank you.
Amazing artist, Gracie Boland, who did our logo. You can find her on Etsy at That Crazy Princess. She's also on Instagram at A Fandom Doodler. Just Google her. You can find her. She's wonderful and talented and so sweet and one of our favorite people in the whole wide world.
She is. So thank you very much, guys. And not sure what our next episode is going to be. We might not have another episode until our November shows, but we'll figure that out and we'll get that out to you. So thank you very much, guys. Have a great nun. Have a great nun? Have a great nun.
Have a great nun.
Have a great nun.
Make a habit of it.